In this video lesson, we will look at sections 2.5 and 2.6. And so we're going to continue looking at the molecules of cells. And in particular, we will be looking at the three main categories of molecules, which include carbohydrates, fats, and protein. And in these sections, 2.5 will look at carbohydrates. 2.6 will look at fats, also known as lipids. And 2.7 then we'll look at protein. So that will be in the next lesson video. So for right now, we'll look at carbohydrates. And carbohydrates, they function as a supply of energy, and they have a structural role in some plants and animals as well. So these carbohydrates are characterized by the presence of the group of atoms, hydrogen, carbon, and OH in a ratio of hydrogen atoms to oxygen atoms that's approximately 2 to 1. So quite a lot of oxygen and hydrogen in these, along with the carbon backbone as well. So there are many types of carbohydrates in the cell, and they're often categorized as either as simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates, and we will explain the difference between those in just a minute. So simple carbohydrates then, it's a carbohydrate with 3 to 7 carbon atoms, and it's called a simple sugar or a monosaccharide. A pentose is a monosaccharide with 5 carbons in it. A hexose means a 6 carbon sugar, and the one that we probably know most is the glucose molecule. It is a hexose sugar that our bodies commonly use as an energy source. And other common hexoses are fructose and galactose. Fructose is found in many fruits and vegetables. Galactose you find in milk. And they have the same molecular formula, but they have a slightly different structure to them. And so you can see they're not labeled which one is which there at the bottom, but you can see that there are slight differences between the structures of each of those if you look carefully. Disaccharides, they contain 2 monosaccharides that are joined by a dehydration reaction, which we covered in the last lesson. Maltose, it's formed by 2 glucose molecules that are joined together, and we have digestive enzymes that can break the bond between them. The one that we know most commonly is sucrose or table sugar, and this forms from the dehydration reaction of glucose combining with fructose. Lactose in milk, it comes from the glucose, which is combined with a galactose molecule. So those are a few examples of disaccharides. Then we have what are known as polysaccharides or complex carbohydrates. So these contain many monomers that are linked together. So polysaccharides, they can have the same monomers, but they're linked together differently. Now, starch is a storage form of glucose in plants, and it has very long chains of glucose and fewer side chains than glycogen. Glycogen is it's a polymer of carbohydrate that's stored in animal cells. So the starch then, it's found in foods such as potatoes, bread, and many examples of that. So that would be starch, and then the glycogen then, as I just mentioned, it's the storage form of glucose in animals. So it has very long chains of glucose, and it has more side chains than starch does. So the liver stores glucose as glycogen. Between meals, the liver releases glucose to help keep glucose levels constant. We also store glycogen in muscle as well, actually. So that's those are chains of carbohydrates, and then a further complex carbohydrate is cellulose, found only in plants, and it's a polymer of glucose, and you will find it in the cell walls, and this has a structural component to it. So this allows plants to remain upright. Plants obviously don't have a skeleton like we do, so it's largely the cellulose in plants that allows them to retain their structure. Now, the glucose molecules in cellulose, though, they're linked together in a different manner than in starch and glycogen. And as it turns out, we do not have the digestive enzymes in order to actually break down cellulose. So this is actually what passes through our digestive tract as fiber. And so it's not actually absorbed in the human digestive tract. There are animals that can digest it, but we as humans, we cannot. All right, so those are some basics about the carbohydrates, and this is a summary of that. And now we will have a look at, briefly look at lipids, also known as fats, and they are a diverse group of molecules, and they contain more energy per gram than any other biological molecule. So lipids, they include fats like butter and oils, example corn oil, which are energy storage molecules in organisms. Lipids include what are referred to as phospholipids, and this is the main component of the cell membrane. Lipids also include steroids, such as the sex hormones like estrogen and testosterone. And although lipids are structurally and functionally diverse, they have one common feature: they are all hydrophobic, and so they basically do not mix with water. So fats tend to be from animals. They are solid at room temperature. Example, butter, as you know, would be solid at room temperature. Oils are usually from plants, and generally speaking, they are liquid at room temperature. So fats and oils, they form when a glycerol molecule reacts with 3 fatty acids, and a fat molecule then is often referred to as a triglyceride because it has the 3 fatty acids which are combined with a molecule of glycerol. So hence the name triglyceride. And here you can see some examples of that. And so where you have 3 fatty acids that combine with glycerol, you have dehydration reactions that take place, and so then these combine to form an actual fat molecule, which is on the right of that reaction. Fats and oils, they are hydrophobic, but they can disperse in water if you add what's referred to as an emulsifier. And emulsifiers, they have a non-polar end and a polar end. So they position themselves around an oil or fat droplet so that the non-polar ends project inward and the polar heads project outward. And dispersion of fats and oils in water is called emulsification. And an example is just simply the use of a soap, like a dish soap or something, and that would be referred to as an emulsifier. We have some naturally occurring ones as well. For example, bile, which is produced in the liver. And this emulsifies fats in the intestine so that it can actually be absorbed in the human digestive tract. So we have saturated, unsaturated, and trans fatty acids. So fatty acids, they contain the hydrocarbon chains that end with a functional group COOH. And saturated fatty acids, they do not have any double bonds between the carbon atoms, and these fats are generally solid at room temperature. Then we have unsaturated fatty acids, so they contain one or more double bonds in the carbon chain, and these are usually oils, and they're liquid at room temperature. The trans fats, and we hear a lot about that in in the media, they have trans double bonds, so they are often produced chemically or occur in processed foods. And you can see we have the cis form there, the unsaturated cis fats. An example of a saturated fat would be butter, and then we have the hydrogenated oils, and many of these are unsaturated trans fats. So phospholipids, these are similar to fats, except they have a polar phosphate head instead of a third fatty acid. And one part of the molecule is polar, and the rest is nonpolar. In an aqueous environment, they spontaneously form a bilayer, which means there would be two layers that form together, and they form the bilayer of cell membranes. And you can see kind of how they're oriented there in that diagram. And so and then we have steroids. Steroids are also they are a type of lipid, and it has a structure that consists of a backbone of 4 fused carbon rings, actually. And you can see a diagram of that there in the bottom right. Different steroids, they have different arrangements of atoms in the rings and different functional groups. So cholesterol is a steroid as well. It's formed by the body. It's actually essential to our homeostasis. It's also consumed in food, but the body produces it as well, actually. So it's a component of the plasma membrane and a precursor for other steroids, such as testosterone and estrogen. So it actually is a very important compound, but we must be careful that we don't take in too much of it, because then it can have harmful effects. All right, so that looks at carbohydrates and lipids, and then we will next look at proteins.